If you touch her, Shin Jae-won said, his voice so quiet it made the room feel smaller, I will dismantle everything you have built, every account, every alliance, every name you have ever hidden behind. He straightened his cufflink, and I will do it slowly. The man across the table laughed nervously. Jae-won did not. And then, from somewhere down the corridor, came the sound of small feet running very fast, a crash loud enough to make the windows tremble, and two identical 6-year-old voices screaming at each other in Korean about whose fault it was. Jae-won closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. We're done here, he said. Seoul did not welcome strangers. It tolerated them, with cold patience and the quiet certainty that they would be removed soon enough. Zara Mensah had been warned. Her mother had gripped her wrist at the airport in Accra and said, "You are going to a city that eats ambition for breakfast and spits out bones by noon." Zara kissed her cheek and walked through the departure gate without looking back. That was 3 years ago. Now she stood in the rain outside a glass tower in Gangnam, blazer-soaked, laptop bag clutched to her chest, a crumpled business card in her fist that read, Shin Group Holdings, Acquisitions Division. A drunk executive had handed it to her at a networking event. She had laughed it off. Then her firm folded 2 weeks later, and the card stopped being funny. The lobby guard looked her up and down. She gave him her best smile, the one that had charmed professors, survived Lagos traffic, and once talked a customs officer out of confiscating her entire sample collection. He picked up the phone, made a call, put it down. 42nd floor, he said. They're expecting you. Zara blinked. She had not called ahead. She stepped into the elevator and told herself that was simply how efficient Korean companies operated. She was wrong, but she would not find out why for another 40 minutes. If you love stories where power meets passion and nothing goes according to plan, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. The 42nd floor smelled like money. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, woven into marble floors and the particular hush of a space that had never been used for anything ordinary. A woman in a white blazer met her at the elevator. Ms. Mensah, Mr. Shin will see you now. I didn't have an appointment, Zara said carefully. No, the woman agreed and walked. Zara followed, sir, for a while, and nearly stepped on a small boy crouched in the middle of the hallway, poking at something on the floor with a pen. He looked up at her. 6 years old, dark eyes, sharp as tacks, wearing a tiny suit jacket with the tie already half unknotted. You're tall, he said in very clear English. You're in the hallway, she replied. He considered this. Fair, he said, and went back to poking the floor. Zara stepped around him and kept walking, filing that firmly, in the category of things she would think about later. The office at the end of the hall had floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over Seoul like a throne above a kingdom. And behind a desk that cost more than Zara's apartment building sat a man who looked like danger had learned to wear a suit. Shin Jae-won was 34, sharp jaw, dark eyes that moved slowly and missed nothing. A stillness that was not peace, it was control. The difference mattered. He looked up. He did not look surprised. Zara Mensah, he said, Ghana-born, British-educated, 3 years building your own textile consulting practice in Seoul, until your business partner liquidated the accounts and disappeared to Jeju with your client list. Zara went very still. You have a 94% client satisfaction record, he continued, an eye for detail that 3 of my competitors have tried to poach, and you speak 5 languages. 2 of which are useful to me right now. How do you know any of that? You searched the Shin Group name 11 times in the last 2 weeks. Our security team flags that. A pause. We also won the Busan port contract your old firm was competing for, by the way. Every self-preserving instinct she had sent up flares. She pulled out the chair and sat down. Something moved behind his eyes. Not surprise? Interest? What do you need someone with 5 languages for? She asked. He almost smiled. There's a summit in 3 weeks, a private gathering, old families, Agreements that don't appear on any government record. I need someone who can move through that room without looking like they belong to me. A spy, she said. An observer, he corrected. Why me? Because you have independent reason to be in that room. You're sharp enough to know what to listen for, and you have no idea how deep this goes. He leaned back. Ignorance, in the right hands, is the perfect cover. What does it pay? This time he did smile. Just barely. Just enough. Enough to rebuild everything your partner took, and then some. I'll need my own exit protocol. Anything goes sideways, I walk. No questions. Agreed. And I want the name of whoever liquidated my accounts. Thursday. Zara Mensa extended her hand. Shin Jae-won shook it. Neither of them knew they had just made the most complicated decision of their lives. The door behind Zara swung open. Two identical 6-year-old boys tumbled through it at full speed, collided with each other, and crashed into the side of the desk. Papers flew. A pen holder tipped. Jae-won's coffee, miraculously, did not spill, because one of the boys caught it with both hands without being asked, set it back carefully, and then looked up at his father with enormous, innocent eyes. We were just walking, said the first boy, Minjun. Very fast, added the second, Junho. In the wrong direction, Jae-won said. The right direction was boring, Miss Minjun said. Jae-won looked at them with the expression of a man who had negotiated with crime dynasties and found fatherhood somehow more complicated. He looked at Zara. My sons. Zara looked at the twins. Junho was already studying her with the focused attention of a small scientist encountering an interesting specimen. Minjun was straightening his tie. She's the one from the hallway, Minjun announced. I already talked to her. You poked the floor with a pen, Zara said. That's not quite a conversation. Minjun pointed at her. I like her, he told his father. Jae-won's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. Out, he said quietly. The twins left, loudly. The Shin Group on paper was a holdings company. Real estate, textiles, hotels, restaurants. Off paper, it was the eastern pillar of an organization older than most governments, built by 3 Korean noble families who had decided centuries ago that power was too important to leave to politicians. Jae-won was heir to one of those families, the youngest to hold the seat in 4 generations, and the only one who had ever looked at the old order and decided, quietly, systematically, to dismantle it from the inside. The twins' mother had been gone for 4 years, a woman from a rival lineage, chosen by the family council, who had looked at the life Jae-won carried and decided, with full clarity, that she wanted no part of it. She had signed the papers, kissed her sons twice, and moved to Vancouver without looking back. Jae-won did not blame her. He understood the weight she had walked away from better than anyone. What remained were Minjun and Junho, 6 years old, sharp as broken glass, and utterly convinced that they were in charge of everything. His grandmother, Lady Shin Bok-soon, was 81 and sharpened like a blade that had never been allowed to rust. 3 rules: loyalty, silence, and marriage within the lineage. Jae-won had broken the 3rd rule twice. Both times ended in negotiations that were more war than heartbreak. He was not supposed to bring an outsider into the summit. He had not told his grandmother. The twins, unfortunately, were already telling everyone everything. Zara prepared the way she did everything, completely, efficiently, with a focus that left no room for doubt. She studied the families, the Shin lineage, the O family controlling maritime trade from Incheon, the Kwan family's pharmaceutical reach across Southeast Asia, the Park Yamamoto alliance, a Korean-Japanese merger of blood and money so entangled it would take a lawyer and an archaeologist to unpick. She memorized faces, pressure points, who owed whom, who hated whom, who had a son in a Zurich rehab facility nobody was supposed to know about. Jae-won met with her every other day in a conference room with no cameras, a detail she clocked and filed away. He was precise, economical, no small talk. He corrected her pronunciation twice and didn't apologize, but he arrived to every session with her coffee made exactly the way she had. And when she found a discrepancy in the trade ledgers that his own analysts had missed, he went quiet for a long moment before saying simply, "Good." From Shin Jae-won, she was learning good was a standing ovation. The twins attended exactly none of these sessions and somehow absorbed all of the information anyway. On the fourth day of preparation, Zara arrived to find Min-jun sitting outside the conference room door with a piece of paper and a crayon. He had drawn what appeared to be a family tree with several of the names spelled phonetically but alarmingly accurately, and was adding little frowning faces next to the ones he had decided were villains. "How do you know any of these names?" she asked. "I listen," he said simply. "Where is your brother?" Min-jun pointed down the hall without looking up. Zara turned. Junho was sitting on the floor outside Jae-won's office, ear pressed flat against the bottom of the door. She looked back at Min-jun. "Does your father know you do this?" "He pretends he doesn't," Min-jun said. "It's easier for everyone." Zara stared at this 6-year-old for a long moment. Then she sat down on the floor beside him and looked at his drawing. "You spelled that wrong," she said, pointing at one name. Min-jun erased it with his thumb and looked at her expectantly. She spelled it out loud. He wrote it down, letter by careful letter. "You're useful," he told her. "So are you," she said quietly, and meant it. The summit was held at a private estate in the hills above the Han River. No public address. Black cars dispatched from an undisclosed location. Curtains drawn. Route changed every gathering. The twins were supposed to be at home with their nanny, Miss Park, who had been with the family for 6 years and had the permanently alert expression of a woman who had learned the hard way never to assume anything was where she had left it. The twins were not at home. They were, in fact, folded into the boot of the third car in the convoy, having discovered the departure schedule by listening through the floor, and packed themselves a bag of rice crackers, 2 juice boxes, and Min-jun's villain family tree, which he considered essential field equipment. Nobody discovered this until the convoy had already cleared the city. Jae-won found out via a text from Miss Park that read simply, "They are not here. I am so sorry." He stared at his phone. Then he looked at the seat across from him in the car. Then he called the driver of car 3. Silence from the boot. Then rustling. Then Junho's voice. "We can explain." "You will explain," Jae-won said, in a tone that the driver immediately decided did not require him to participate in. "When we get there, do not move, do not speak, do not touch anything." A pause. "Can we eat our rice crackers?" Min-jun asked. Jae-won hung up. At the estate, the twins were installed in a side room with strict instructions to stay put, stay silent, and under no circumstances speak to anyone. Miss Park, summoned at emergency speed, was 40 minutes away. Zara wore deep green, hair up, elegant. She carried herself like a woman who had been in this room before, the most useful lie she had ever told with her body. She was introduced as a consultant, an international trade specialist. The assessments moved across her like weather. Who is she? Why is she here? What does Shin Jae-won want with her? And she smiled and listened, and in 2 hours had gathered more than Jae-won expected her to collect all evening. Then she found something he had not sent her to find. In a corridor near the East Library, she paused near a half-open door. 2 men inside were speaking low and fast, in a dialect she recognized from her years working with a Ghanaian trade delegation, a deliberate choice. They believed no one in this building would understand them. They were wrong. Her champagne glass grew heavy in her hand. Someone inside. The Shin family was planning to sell the organization's most protected asset for Seoul, a portfolio of land titles along the southern coast that represented not just money but the ancestral claim of the lineage itself, to an outside syndicate. The deal was 3 days from closing. The name she heard was not one she had memorized. His cousin, Shin Do-hyun, who had smiled at her across the dinner table 40 minutes ago and poured her water without being asked. She straightened, turned to go, and nearly collided with Min-jun, who was standing 3 feet behind her in the corridor, rice cracker in hand, eyes wide. He had heard everything. I knew he was a villain, Minjun whispered, pointing at the villain family tree he was still somehow holding. Do-hyun's name had a very large frown face next to it. Where is your brother? Zara breathed. Minjun pointed. Junho was at the end of the corridor, pressed against the wall, watching the door the two men were about to exit from. Zara grabbed Minjun's hand and moved fast. She swept Junho up by the arm just as the door began to open, turned a corner, and pressed both boys flat against the wall behind a large decorative vase until the footsteps passed. Junho looked up at her. "You're good at this," he whispered. "Don't tell your father," she said. "He already knows everything," Minjun said wisely. He was not wrong. She found Jae-won near the garden terrace. He read her face the moment he saw it. "Outside," he said. They walked to a corner of the stone terrace where the music from inside became a murmur, and Seoul glittered far below. "Talk," he said. She told him everything. The dialect, the names, the timeline, the land titles. Do-hyun. 3 days. Jae-won was silent with the kind of silence that had weather inside it. "Do-hyun," he said, not a question. "You suspected. I didn't have proof." He looked at her. "Now I do." Behind them, from the direction of the side room, came a sound. They both turned. Minjun and Junho were standing in the doorway to the terrace in their small suits, Reese cracker crumbs on their lapels, looking extremely guilty and also extremely interested. "We heard the corridor part," Junho offered. "We weren't going to say anything," Minjun added. Then he held up the family tree. "But I drew him with the biggest frown." Jae-won looked at his sons for a long, controlled moment. Then he looked at Zara. Then he crouched down to the boy's level. "What exactly did you hear?" Minjun told him. "Word for word." With alarming accuracy, Junho supplied the parts Minjun missed, and Minjun corrected the parts Junho got slightly wrong. Between the two of them, they produced a near-perfect account. Jae-won stood back up, straightened his jacket. "Back inside," he told them. "Now, sit down. Eat your rice crackers. Do not move until Miss Park arrives." The twins obeyed, unusually quickly. He turned back to Zara and said quietly, "I'm going back in to smile at my cousin over dessert. He will never know that tonight, a woman in a green dress and 2 6-year-olds just changed everything." He glanced at her sideways. "You did well." She looked out over Seoul and told herself she was a professional who had simply done her job. Her heart, which had not received that memo, continued doing whatever it wanted. The fallout from Do-hyun's betrayal did not arrive loudly. It never did in Jae-won's world. Within 72 hours, the land sale was blocked. The outside syndicate received a visit that ended the conversation permanently, and Do-hyun was summoned to a private lunch where Jae-won said very little, and the silence did all the work. His cousin left pale and careful. Jae-won should have felt satisfied. Instead, he kept thinking about a woman in a green dress standing on a stone terrace in the rain, steady as bedrock, telling him things he needed to hear. He called her 3 days later. "The matter is resolved," he said. "I assumed," she said. "I'd like to continue our arrangement, more formally." "You mean you want to keep using me?" she said pleasantly. "I mean," he said, with the careful precision of a man rarely caught reaching for words, "I'd like to continue working with you." "Dinner," she said. "Real food. Not whatever that summit was serving." "That was Michelin-starred cuisine." "It was beautiful and tiny. I'm Ghanaian, Jae-won. I need actual portions." There was a sound on his end she might have called a laugh if she didn't know better. "Somewhere with rice," she said. "There is rice in Seoul." 7 o'clock, don't be late." She hung up before he could respond. In the background on his end, she had heard, just before the line went dead, Minjun's voice announcing to no one in particular, "He's smiling, Junho, he's smiling, come look." Dinner became a pattern, then a habit, then the thing both of them organized everything else around without admitting it. The twins inserted themselves into this pattern with zero invitation and total commitment. The first Time Zara came to the Shin apartment for dinner, she arrived to find the table already set by Minjun, who had put out 4 plates instead of 2, with the confidence of a child who had decided how things were going to go and saw no reason to discuss it. Junho had made a name card for her seat. It said Zara in large letters with a star drawn next to it. Jae-won looked at the table, then at his sons, then at Zara. They did this themselves, he said. I can see that, she said. She picked up the name card. I like the star. Minjun looked vindicated. Junho beamed. Over the following weeks, the twins conducted what could only be described as a systematic campaign. They taught Zara words in Korean, mostly useful ones, occasionally words that made Jae-won's security team cover their mouths when she used them in context. They told her things about their father that he had never volunteered, that he kept a book of poetry in his desk drawer, that he could not sleep past 5 in the morning, that the one time he had tried to cook for them he had set off the smoke alarm twice, and ordered delivery with the expression of a man accepting defeat with dignity. In return, Zara told them about Ghana, the market, the fabric, the way her mother could navigate a crowd like water moves through rock. She taught them to count to 10 in Twi, which they practiced loudly and constantly until Jae-won knew it too, whether he wanted to or not. You already know this isn't a simple love story. If you're hooked, drop a comment below. I read every single one, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time. Then his grandmother found out. Lady Shin Bok-soon arrived at headquarters on a Tuesday without announcement, her preferred method of reminding people she needed no invitation anywhere. She walked past the woman in the white blazer, entered Jae-won's office and stood. Sit down, grandmother, he said. I prefer to stand. She looked at him with the weight of 81 years of watching men make mistakes. The African woman. Her name is Zara Mensa. I know her name, her mother's name, her business history, and the name of the partner who robbed her. A pause. I also know you have seen her 11 times in the last month outside professional hours, and that my grandsons have made her a name card with a star on it. Jae-won said nothing. You are already in love with her. Still nothing. Then you are already in danger. Not from me, from the others who will see her as leverage. She moved to the door, paused. She is remarkable. I reviewed her work. That is not the problem. She turned back once. Remarkable people make remarkable targets. She left. Jae-won stood at his window and understood with the clarity of someone who had been avoiding an understanding for weeks that his grandmother was not warning him away from Zara. She was warning him to protect her. He called Zara immediately. Change your route home tonight, he said. Why? I'll explain in person. Are you free? I was going to cook. I'll come to you. Silence. Then, do you even know how to sit in a normal apartment, Jae-won, like a regular person? I've been practicing, he said. Are you bringing the boys? A pause. Do you want me to bring the boys? She considered this for exactly 2 seconds. Yes. He arrived at 7 with wine he had clearly not grabbed at random, 2 boys in pajamas who had absolutely refused to be left behind, and the slightly uncertain posture of a man who was genuinely not sure how to sit in a normal apartment. It was the most human she had ever seen him look. It completely destroyed the last of her professional composure. She fed them all jollof rice and chicken. The twins ate with the focused enthusiasm of people encountering a revelation. Junho asked for seconds before he had finished his first. Minjun declared it the best thing he had ever eaten, glanced at his father and added, "Better than the chef," then looked at the ceiling as if he had not said that. After dinner, the boys fell asleep on Zara's sofa under a blanket they had found themselves. Junho's head on Minjun's shoulder, Minjun still clutching the villain family tree in one small fist. Jae-won looked at them for a long moment. They don't do that, he said quietly. Fall asleep somewhere unfamiliar? They never have. Zara looked at the boys, then at him. They feel safe, she said simply. The word landed somewhere it was not expecting to land. She told him about Akri, the market. Her father's voice saying that fabric is just a map of where a people have been and where they are going. He told her about the weight of a lineage you did not ask for, the walks before dawn, the loneliness of rooms full of people who all need something from you. Your grandmother came to see you, she said softly. He nodded. She said, I'm remarkable and in danger. She was right on both counts. Which worries you more? He looked at her. The careful, memorizing look. Except this time he didn't redirect it. The danger, he said. Not because I doubt you, because I cannot afford to lose you and pretend it would be fine. The words sat between them, honest and unmoving. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Okay, she said. Then we deal with it. It's not simple. The people who will come... J1, she squeezed. I grew up in a market. I was robbed by a business partner. I infiltrated a Mafia summit in a green dress and hid your children behind a decorative vase. I am not delicate. His hand turned under hers and held on. No, he said, you are not. From the sofa, without opening his eyes, Minjun said, finally. Junho made a small sound of agreement. Neither adult said a word, but neither let go either. What followed was not a clean story. It never is when two worlds that were never supposed to touch decide to stay in the same place. The O family sent a formal objection through 3 layers of intermediary. Jaewon ignored it with increasing efficiency each time. A tabloid photograph of Zara outside the Shin apartment appeared online. Jaewon had it suppressed in 4 hours, but not before his uncle had seen it and called a 6-hour family meeting that resolved nothing. And then came the night 2 men followed Zara home from a client meeting. She handled it herself, stepped into a convenience store called Jaewon, perfectly calm. 2 men, possibly O family. I've memorized their faces. He went silent in the way she now knew meant fury so controlled it had no temperature. He arrived in 11 minutes. She timed it. He walked into that convenience store, looked at her once, checking, cataloging, making sure, and then stepped back outside. She did not ask what happened next. Some things did not require a report. What she did not know was that the twins, who had been told this story secondhand by the security driver, spent the following week drawing increasingly elaborate pictures of the 2 men being chased by a very tall African woman and a very serious Korean man, which they presented to Jaewon's head of security with the solemn gravity of a formal briefing. The head of security, a man who had survived 3 assassination attempts and a political coup, did not know what to do with this and quietly put the drawings in his desk drawer. Then came the morning Lady Shin Bok-soon arrived at Zara's door, alone, without announcement. Zara opened it and did not flinch. The 2 women sat in the kitchen and drank tea for 2 hours. Jaewon waited in his car downstairs. He did not ask what they talked about. He had learned that there were conversations he was not meant to control. What he did know was that when his grandmother came downstairs, she looked at him through the car window for a long moment before getting into her own car. She did not explain. She did not need to. What she had said to Zara at the door on the way out was this: he has never once let anyone in, not in 34 years. My grandsons have never made anyone a name card. A pause. Don't waste it. Zara had stood at her door and watched a woman who had shaped an empire walk down an ordinary stairwell, and thought about how the world was very large and also very small depending on where you were standing. The last threat came from Do-hyun. He had been cooperative since the private lunch, quiet, careful, rearranging. Jaewon had watched him with the attention of someone who knows that a quiet enemy is simply an enemy who is rearranging. He had found the one piece of leverage the lineage could not easily absorb: a document, old, handwritten, a promissory agreement between the Shin family founder and the O patriarch 3 generations back, a clause that, argued correctly, could challenge Jaewon's seat at the family council. Do-hyun planned to surface it at the annual council in front of every elder who still carried old loyalties. He had not planned on Zara. She had found the document 2 weeks earlier, following a thread in the historical records she had been quietly pulling since her first week of preparation. She hadn't mentioned it to Jaewon because she wasn't certain. Then she cross-referenced it with family correspondence from the same period and became very certain, very fast, 6 days building the counter-argument. Legal, historical, irrefutable. She handed Jaewon the folder on the morning of the council. He read it in the car, then read it again. He looked up at her. Something crossed his face. Not strategic, not controlled, just clear. When did you... 2 weeks ago, I wanted to be certain first. Zara. Don't make it a thing. Go win your meeting. He looked at her one moment longer, then he got out of the car. What he did not know was that in the back of the car behind them, the twins, who had once again defied Miss Park, who was honestly considering a career change, had read every page of the counter-argument folder during the drive, understood approximately 70% of it, and were now sitting in the car park outside the council building quietly coaching each other on the remaining 30%. Do-hyun is going to look so stupid, Junho said with deep satisfaction. I'm going to draw his face after, Min-jun confirmed. The council meeting lasted 4 hours. Do-hyun made his move at the 2-hour mark. It landed exactly as he intended, a ripple through the room, old loyalties stirring. Jaewon waited. Let it breathe. Let Do-hyun finish. Then he opened the folder. He did not gloat. He did not raise his voice. He laid out the counter-argument section by section, source by source, with the patience of a man who has already won and is simply showing his work. Do-hyun went pale in the middle. By the end, the room was very quiet. Lady Shin Bok-soon looked at her grandson for a long moment, then around the table. Are there further objections, she asked. There were not. He found Zara, at a cafe 3 blocks away working on her laptop. The twins were at the table beside her, supposedly doing homework. Min-jun was drawing. Junho was eating a pastry and reading one of Zara's documents upside down, which was impossibly the right way up for him. Jaewon sat down. Zara looked up, read his face. It worked. It worked. She nodded, satisfied, and closed her laptop. Do-hyun? Reassigned out of Seoul, still family bought, but out of proximity. Fair? He looked at her, then at his sons, who were both pretending they were not listening with the unconvincing performance of children who were absolutely listening. I've been thinking, he said. Careful, she said. Last time you were thinking I ended up at a Mafia summit hiding your children behind a vase. This is different. Is it dangerous? Possibly, depending on your answer. Min-jun put down his crayon. Junho stopped chewing. Both boys stared at their father with the undivided attention of children who understood, with absolute 6-year-old certainty, that this was the important part. Jaewon looked at Zara. Shin Jaewon, who chose every word with surgical precision, who had dismantled enemies and negotiated with dynasties without raising his voice, was briefly, visibly, uncertain. It was her favorite thing she had ever seen on a human face. Stay, he said, not as a consultant, not as a cover. Stay. Zara looked at him. The careful, fully present look that made people feel seen in ways they weren't always prepared for. The family, she said, is adjusting. My grandmother has decided the others will follow. The threats don't stop. No, but neither do I. A pause. Neither, I think, do you. Junho slid off his chair, walked around the table, and placed his small hand over Zara's on the table. He looked at her with complete seriousness. We want you to stay, he said, Min-jun and me. We already decided. Min-jun nodded vigorously from across the table, holding up the family tree. At the top, in careful crayon letters, he had added a new name. Zara, with the biggest star of all next to it. Zara looked at the paper, looked at Junho's hand on hers, looked at Jaewon, who was watching her with an expression so unguarded she almost had to look away. You're going to have to learn to cook something, she told him. He blinked. I have a personal chef. When it's just us, in the mornings, You're making breakfast sometimes. I can make eggs, he said. You can learn to make more than eggs. Minjun, I'll teach him. Junho, you burned water last week. Minjun, that was an experiment. Zara laughed, the full body kind, the one that filled a room. Jaewon watched her laugh and looked like a man who had just remembered that the world had warmth in it. She reached across the table. He held on. Outside Seoul kept going, full of crime and beauty and old blood and new choices, and two people who had absolutely no business falling in love with each other deciding, with complete and mutual stubbornness, to do exactly that anyway. That's a wrap. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a good love story today. New episodes every week. I'll see you in the next one.